So last week for Love is Blind Season 9, we saw some nasty things like Edmond kissing the floor of the men's living quarters. But don't worry, because Love is Blind Denver loves to one-up itself. In week 2, we get one of the nastiest, whitest things I've ever seen in my entire life. A baked chicken smoothie. I'm gonna gag. I promise you I'm gonna gag. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real recap and review. And today, yes, we're talking all about episodes 7 through 9. That's week 2 of Love is Blind Denver. We're in the 9th season of the US version of this show. And you think that I was over exaggerating in the intro, right? You would be wrong, because it is definitely one of the grossest episodes I've ever seen in my entire life of this reality TV show. What is Jordan thinking? Now, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about Love is Blind, movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you do too, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, like this video, and get loud in the comments and let me know what you think of episodes 7 through 9. What shocked you the most? Which couple do you see making it to the altar? Or do you see like no couples making it to the altar? Because I'm not going to lie to you guys, I don't think I see anyone making it to the altar this season. Now, just to look ahead, we have week 3 coming up next Wednesday. That's episodes 10 and 11. And then we have the final week, week 4. That's on October 22nd, and that's the episode 12 finale. That's going to be the weddings, of course. So we're going to see who makes it, who says yes, who says no. Clearly, some couples make it to the altar. We've seen it in the coming up montages. But I don't know if anyone gets married. So you know how we do it here, right? Usually there is a spoiler-free thoughts. But I can't this season. I just can't. It is so bonkers this year that I just have to go ahead and get straight into my spoilers. So this is a spoiler warning, of course. I'm so grateful that you tapped in. If you haven't watched the episodes yet, please save this video to your watch later list. Come back and let me know your thoughts in the comments. But for now, I want to get right into where we start with week 2. It's episode 7. If I gag during this recap, by the way, please don't judge me. So episode 7 picks up in Mexico with Joe and Madison, because remember in episode 6 we were left on a cliffhanger with them because Madison was crying and Joe was belligerent. And I think there was more than alcohol at that party, right? I'm not insinuating anything, but I'm insinuating something. So Joe and Madison, we lock in on them and Joe asks, "What are we doing here?" And I'm thinking, homie, what are you doing? You don't even remember what the heck happened the night before. Apparently, he seemed incredibly upset as Madison was crying outside, and he goes back to bed. But then he gets up and he starts laughing, and I'm just thinking this man is not serious. But you know what's also unserious? The way that they make their bed. Like, I know it's a hotel, but that bed has so many miscellaneous items. Hats, I don't know, bags, and whatever else is there. I don't even want to know what's under the sheets. So, just make your bed. So as she's climbing into bed, Joe then decides to get up and have the conversation standing up. This man his body language is very weird with Madison, but it's also odd because he starts laughing again, and I'm thinking, what was in his drink? So they're trying to have a conversation, or at least Madison is, and Joe is just not having this. So I don't even know if they're going to make it all the way through Mexico at this point. And then Joe reveals in his testimonial that maybe he drank to his limit. Buddy, you think you drank to your limit? No. I think you set a new limit, because you didn't just break through the ceiling, brother. You literally just skyrocketed into another stratosphere. You drank way too much. So we move on from the very alcohol-infused conversation between those two and get into Allie and Anton. And we're checking in on them. They're sitting on their little swings or whatever. I don't know. I think at this point they're sitting on these swings and they're having a conversation, but I cannot focus on the conversation at hand because I'm looking at Anton's nose. No, it's not that I'm not talking about that. It's just how red his nose is. His nose was really red, and I'm thinking, homie, did you put sunscreen on? Because, listen, you're lacking melanin, so you might need some sunscreen. And then Allie goes on this weird rant where she's intent on putting makeup on his face and talking about, I guess, giving him a makeover of some sort. Like, if they make it all the way and they have a daughter and the daughter wants to put makeup on his face, okay, he said, I'll do it if I have a daughter. But Allie's like, no, I'm putting mascara on you. And I'm thinking, Allie, you're starting to scare me here. And after those two, we check in on Megan and Jordan. And Megan starts crying while she's talking to Jordan because, remember, Megan was very annoyed by Jordan and his delinquent behavior with Joe, where Joe's the ringleader and Jordan's just like, yes, sir, I'm going to take shots with you and act stupid. God forgive me, but he did act stupid. And then I thought, oh man, this is going to be a big argument to a degree. But then Megan starts laughing and goes back to saying she needs Jordan just to be there for her. And, I love you type of deal. And Jordan's thinking, I'm off the hook. This man is scot-free. Megan, you were really upset and now you're not. So is anyone sober in the room? So the conversation ends by them saying, I love you. And I'm guessing Megan's just not that mad at Jordan anymore. Okay, so I know y'all were waiting on Kalybriah and Edmond. What's going on with those two? Well, I got an update for you. Edmond apologized for blowing up the night before. You guys remember where he was just like, come on, he's a nice guy. You remember that? It's not a good impression, but it definitely is what happened. But now I was distracted by him apologizing with flowers in his hair, including the hair pick he had. Can the man please be serious? Like at any moment of this appearance on the show, can he be serious? Because every time I'm looking at him, I'm like, man, what you're saying is like nice. He's apologizing, but then he's got like a whole bouquet in his hair. But Kalybriah said, we are not leaving this conversation. We have some serious work to do. And it's because she's stuck on what happened the night before. The thing is, though, Edmond was actually matching the energy to a degree, and he was basically agreeing. So it seems like this was the most mature conversation they'd had outside of the pods. So let's get into Nick and Annie, back to the villainous couple of season 9. That's right, if no one's called them that, I'm calling them that. They're villains. Annie wants to live in the city. They're talking about their living situation, and Nicholas is just like, I am a mountain man. And Annie's like, I just don't know. Nick said he's definitely worried about their work-life balance. And Annie said, I'm not worried about anything. You're perfect. You're everything I want. I just want to pinch your cheeks. And you know how this is going to go, guys. We've seen Love is Blind before. We know how this is going to go. So now we're going to revisit Joe and Madison. And Joe actually apologizes and says, I'll do better for you. Joe claims he just needed a little sleep because he was drinking too much. The thing is, though, I don't know, Joe. I think a little bit of the truth came out in that little drunk rant you had. He said, I still want to marry you, Madison. And she kisses him. She's happy. I don't know what he is, but they seem like they've made up. So then we get a couple's dinner. And at all these couple's dinners, I got to know, do they eat any of the food? Because the minute they get there, they drink. And then they're like, girl time. The boys are going to chat. Did you eat the steak that was on your plate? So Madison ends up having a conversation with all the women of the house and communicates that they got over their rough patch basically by having a certain amount of time together. You catch my drift here? Like they made love. I don't even want to picture that. I don't. So we all know that Joe and Madison are most likely not working out, but let's see what Allie has to say about Anton. She says, we haven't argued or disagreed on anything yet. We're perfect and it's all sunshines and rainbows. Until like the next 2 episodes. So we're looking into the guys now, and Jordan said, Nick and Annie seem to be a match made in heaven. Really? Why are the contestants on this show incredibly terrible about predicting who's going to make it to the altar and about who's doing well? You think Nick and Annie are a match made in heaven? Jordan, I have questions for you. Jordan then explains Megan told him that he was being annoying, and honestly, it was a gut punch. That's what he said it felt like. Let's remember this for future episodes, because when I hear contestants say that, I'm like, that's a slight crack in the foundation. Did I even say the word crack correctly? I don't know. And once the dinner ended, I just really felt like both the guys and the girls were really uncertain about each other's partners. So the dinner ends, and then we get back into the hotel room with Nick and Annie. Oh, I got a lot of notes for this one. Annie decides to throw a curveball at Nick, and now is saying she's nervous that Nick won't love her the same as she loves him. And I'm just wondering, did the producers go to Annie and say, psst, 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 hey, Annie, stir up some drama, because where is this coming from? And then when Nick tries to explain, I love you, Annie scoffs at him and says, you don't get it. She then goes on to say, I don't care what others have to say about us. Awesome. Okay, Nick is saying he doesn't either, but like, where? I'm not defending Nick. I will never defend him this season, but like, where is this coming from, Annie? She then says, I feel like I'm all in and you're not all in on our relationship. And the whole time, Nick is just like looking around the room. Am I being punked? Ashton Kutcher, come from the ceiling. What's happening? Annie then continues to grill Nick and tells him, I don't need you, and my life won't fall apart if you're not in it. But I want you. So at this point, Nick is probably really confused, and he says as much. But then he also tries to reassure her, and he keeps saying, I feel like we're in a very good place, and if he says it one more time, I'm gonna... You know what? It's annoying, but like, he's trying to reassure her, and she's not having it. So Annie, this entire conversation annoyed me because it sounds like they didn't really resolve anything in the moment, but Nick was incredibly confused. I'm confused. America's confused. Annie is just all over the place. Kind of like her hair. Nope. All right, we're going to get into Joe and Madison before we get back to Denver. I got one note for Joe and Madison. Madison and Joe have a conversation about what they did, together. They had a little moment together. You catch my drift here? And Joe's face as she's saying this was like, okay, I'm glad you liked it. He's not in this heart and soul. He is not in this with her. So, y'all, that's the end of Mexico. We're going to move on now to Denver, Colorado. Yeah, get your snow gear on because it's clearly snowing in the mountains. So we're back to Denver. Nick and Vanessa Lachey are introducing us in this moment, but what in the world are they doing on the roof of this random building that seems like it's not staged well? What's going on? So we get a quick montage of everyone moving into these apartments together, and Edmond begins being Edmond. He's climbing into a cabinet and continues to say, these are the tallest cabinets I've ever seen in my life. So part of me, understands if this is above the means in which you're used to living. Yes, I get it. The man is excited. But you're climbing into a cabinet and says, I can fit. He reminds me of like Stewie from Mad TV. Look what I can do. Look what I can do. And just like gets in the cabinet, and Kalybriah's like, Lord help me. Alrighty, so we're looking at Jordan and Megan, and we're figuring out, now that we're rounding out episode 7, that Jordan is not too comfortable here. It seems like he's not a fan of like the hyper stylish apartments. He likes something very low key, while Annie's walking around saying, if there's not a Cartier bracelet in that cabinet, I don't want it. It just seems like, to me, Megan's not going to be happy with their home living situation because he likes living below his means and she definitely likes a more luxurious lifestyle. So Jordan's like, hey, I got a 1-bedroom apartment, and Megan said, that's never going to happen, homie. We're not living there. But Jordan then says, listen, all right, let's get away from the home living situation. Let's talk about family. So Jordan says to Megan there's no reason for her to be nervous about meeting his son's mom, and then she starts crying because she says, I've never done this before. And then Jordan begins talking about his son, and Megan's like, I can't wait to buy him so many gifts. And Jordan said, absolutely not. You are not buying him expensive gifts. You're going to get him Play-Doh, and he's going to like it. But hey, Jordan, if Megan wants to spoil your son, let it be if you get married. I just don't think this conversation was much about Luca, and it was more so about their preferences. Jordan doesn't love luxurious things. Megan has a taste for double G belts. You know what I mean? So like, we can't necessarily compare the two. I mean, I get that there's benefits of both, but they're gonna have to figure this out real soon. Alrighty, so now let's get into episode 8 where we have more Denver moments. We're starting with Nick and Annie. They're having a conversation at the lunch or dinner table or whatever your table it is. And Nick said, I'm very, very put off by how you reacted in Mexico, putting words into my mouth. And then she said, Nick, I'm so sorry, it won't happen again. And he said, you're darn tootin'. He basically said it can't happen again. And to me, she's giving psychotic. I'm sorry, something is really off here. So we're moving into Joe and Madison. And Madison said, listen, I've never introduced a guy to my family. And what a guy to begin with, because you just don't give Joe any beers or anything like that. Don't let him drink anything. Water on the rocks, please. And then Joe continues to ask Madison a weird series of questions, basically centering around if she has any worries or reservations. Basically, he wants her to be scared, I think. And Madison's trying to figure out, what do you want? You want me to be scared? And Joe's like, oh, that's not what I'm saying, but yes. So the back and forth is absolutely crazy. And I think Joe's trying to find any way out of this engagement, but Madison just won't give up. There was even a moment where you can tell Joe messed up because he's adjusting his collar, but it's not like just gonna fix it. He was like, it's hot in here. So then Madison asked the question we all were wondering, why did you propose to me? And Joe's upset. Joe's like, what do you mean? You know what? Fine, I guess I'm gonna keep all my emotions to myself. I'm gonna gaslight you, Madison. That's basically what he's doing. Madison said, "You knew what you signed up for, and I don't think you're marriage-minded." So she takes off her ring and said, and I quote, "Let's put this on ice for a moment." No, she didn't put the ring on ice cubes or anything. She literally meant just, let's take a pause until the next segment. So Megan and Jordan then go and visit Jordan's apartment. Remember, it's a 1-bedroom apartment, and the minute Megan walks in there, like the absolute minute she walks in there, she's like, "Nah, we are not living here." She even said, like, "I reached out to my realtor." Did she? In my head she did. But then they get to Luca's room and they share a crying session while they're in his room. And of course, it is a touching moment. This is maybe the most vulnerable moment of this episode. But I think Luca's going to watch this back and think, y'all were wearing outside shoes in my room? Huh. But seriously, y'all, house shoes. Just have house shoes. It's not hard. Don't wear outside shoes inside. It's gross. And now we're going to get a peek into Allie and Anton because they both share a morning after working night shifts. Anton says, "I've been up for almost 24 hours. And Allie says, "I'm a nurse, so of course I had the night shift. We're coming into a breakfast together. We're so excited, right?" Well, I just feel like this might not be as sustainable. But it does seem like they're the most normal couple so far. Then Allie reveals something that's not so normal. I'm happy for her that she's going to go into school. She's doing it full time, but then she remembers and tells Anton, "When I was doing school full time previously, I lived with my parents and I actually didn't prioritize cleaning, cooking, nothing around the house. It was all up to my parents. So basically, Anton, you're going to have to do all of that." And if Anton could have dropped his glass, he would have. Anton is clearly worried, and then he brings up finances and says, "We need to budget." And Allie said, "Well, what about my Botox?" And Anton said, "Listen, we got a budget." And Allie said, "But what about my Botox, okay? This face doesn't fix itself." But no, Allie, listen, if y'all can't afford it, don't do it. I don't know. They have clearly disagreed on financial things in the past. And remember, Anton said the ring was $5,000, and Allie said it should have been $10,000. So something's up here. And Allie senses something's weird because she actually asked Anton, "Are you being honest?" And he said, "No, I am." But it was a really shaky. And they're like, "No, I am being honest, I think." So I don't know. Something's up with them. And we end their segment with Allie saying, "Close your eyes when we kiss." But hey, here's a crazy theory here, Allie. You want him to close his eyes when you guys kiss. The only way you would know that, though, is if your eyes are open, too. I'm just saying. So now it's time for some family meeting moments, and we're getting it started with Kalybriah meeting Edmond's mom. And hey, Edmond's mom, for all intents and purposes, seems like a very nice lady. Some things I was like, but for the most part, it did seem overall like a pretty darn good meeting. So let's start right at the top. Apparently, Edmond's mom said she's doing better now that she's looking at Edmond's future, and that was such a sweet way to open the conversation, and I like that she said she's blessed and highly favored. I was just waiting for a "God is good," and you say, "and all the time." So they were asking each other questions, giving answers. I just wish Kalybriah asked if something compels her son to kiss floors. All jokes aside, they were asking serious stuff. Edmond's mom said Kalybriah will be going to Ghana with her one day when they get married, because in Ghana, they know her by like her last name, I think. So they're just like, Mrs. I forgot Edmond's last name, but like she seems like she's pretty important in Ghana, which is cool. So Edmond's finished making breakfast, and Edmond actually leads prayer over their breakfast, which might have been the most normal I've seen him this year. Seriously, it was pretty mature, and I'm like, whoa, there's a different side of Edmond. And then they get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty, and Edmond's mom and her sister apparently saw Kalybriah's Instagram, and they both said to each other, "Oh nah." But then she changed her tune when she met Kalybriah, so a quick turnaround. But now I'm wondering, what did they see on Kalybriah's Instagram? Actually, I'm not even going to imagine. So like I said, it was overall a very sweet meeting and conversation, but I feel like Edmond's mom is still sussing out Kalybriah. We'll see what happens there, you guys. All right, let's move on to Joe and Madison. We find out, it's quick notes here, Madison put her ring back on. Shocker. Would you look at that? And they're visiting Joe's apartment. And I have one note about Joe's apartment, not about the aesthetics, but he turns around and says, "There's my PS5, and it's a whole PlayStation 4. Homie, you thought I was going to miss that? Alrighty, it's time for another family meeting moment. Jordan meets Megan's mom, and honestly, she does seem pretty sweet. The mom brings balloons, and they talk about some pretty heavy stuff during the breakfast, or lunch, I can't remember which. But it's the 4th anniversary of Megan's dad's death on that day that they're having a meal together. So of course it's going to be a heavy conversation. They're shedding some tears, and it is a pretty emotional moment. Megan's sister, I noticed, by the way, I made the double G joke earlier, but she's got the double G belt. I clocked that really quickly. And then Megan reveals that Jordan had a vasectomy, and Megan's sister was really shocked. Of course, because you hear that, you're like, so my sister won't be able to be a mom by you? Well, And then they reveal a little bit more about this custody question with Luca, Jordan's son. Apparently, Luca can't live with Megan and Jordan, and they'll need to split time 50-50. But remember, Jordan, I think, reassured Megan that, yeah, he's going to live with us. So what changed, right? I don't know. That's going to be a really tough situation, I think, and that might be a little bit of a strain on Luca. So I don't know, man. This seems messy. At the end of the meal, Megan's mom and sister give their blessings to Megan, and I guess for now, all is well with Jordan and Megan. So let's move on to Nick and Annie. They visit Nick's home after hiking the mountains in their snow boots, and they get there, and this home is big, and Nick's got money. His garage includes a sports bike and an old sports car from like the 60s or something. And at this rate, now I know why Nick doesn't want to go live in the city. But Nick is open for compromise because he tells Annie, it's okay, we're not going to sell this house. We can come up here maybe like whenever we want, and then I'll live in the city with you because I understand your business is in the city. And Annie's like, this is so amazing. Put me back in the sports car. But even through all this, I get the impression that Annie just doesn't like how mountainous all of this is. So we'll see if the compromise really does play out. Alrighty, let's move on to yet another family meeting. Madison is meeting Joe's family. And honestly, I gotta ask Joe's family, is your son okay? The meeting itself doesn't have anything of note for the most part, but Madison does seem to be getting along with Joe's family. I just question if Joe still wants this and wants to be in this because he says it reminds him, oh, this is why I fell in love with her in the pods. But it seems like he's trying to like convince himself in a way, like, this is the Madison I fell in love with in the pods. Oh gosh, I love Madison in the pods. Like he keeps saying in the pods, and I'm thinking, homie, do you love her out of the pods? So now we have Allie meeting Anton's friends, not family. And this meeting was super dramatic. Like, oh my gosh. Allie asks him if there's anything she should be aware of, you know what I mean? And Anton says, well, before they get here, there's going to be a lot of stories being told. Anton's friends said that after their first date, they moved in together. So you know you can't take advice from them. Because that's crazy, y'all. His friends dated one time and moved in together? What are you doing? Allie reveals in the conversation that she doesn't like Denver and is only in the city because of work, and that they've both been exploring moving to Florida. No more moving to Florida, okay? Too many transplants coming over here. This state is overpopulated. No. But we'll move on. Melissa said Anton isn't the married type, and I'm thinking, what do you mean by that? Joseph said to Anton, well, I said I was going to give it 2 weeks, homie. I'm not going to lie. So Joseph already made a bet that it would only last 2 weeks. And that's not great because what do they know that we don't know about Anton? So in a conversation with both of the girls in the restroom, the mics are still hot. So we hear that Anton and Joseph apparently used to go to strip clubs together. It was when they were single. They partied a lot. Even though it was only 4 months ago, Allie's nervous. And she's skeptical now of whether Anton can settle down and be faithful. Yeah, homie, that's bad. So now it's time for episode 9, and we're still in Denver, and this is where the most disgusting moment of the season and in Love is Blind history occurs. It's Jordan and Megan. They're in the apartment, and Jordan's like, you're going to have my smoothie, bro. And Megan's like, great, what's in it? Oh my, I'm like literally gagging. This is bad. It's baked chicken, Crystal Light, and then they blend it together. What in the white nonsense? Okay, so now it's time to move on to Allie and Anton, and here's where I thought they were going to have a follow-up conversation about the dinner they had with his friends, and they didn't. It looks like they skipped over the entire conversation, and I'm thinking to myself, were they not supposed to speak together? Allie told Anton, we got a lot of talking, you got a lot of explaining to do, and where was the explaining? And then we get Edmond and Kalybriah checking in on them after the meeting. And apparently Edmond overnighted a gift for Kalybriah. He bought her a pair of roller skates so they could go rollerblading together. And I'm not going to lie. I'm like, Edmond, it's kind of sweet. Are you turning over a new leaf? Just don't kiss the leaf, but you're turning over one. So after that kind of cute moment, we get into Joe and Madison. And Madison is driving a 2-person cart, I guess. And I just know Chris Tate, my bro, is going to insert a joke here. And I can't make that joke. I'm not making no jokes. I'll leave it up to my brother to make that joke. So now Megan and Jordan, we're back to them in their house searching already. Megan she went into that one bedroom and immediately texted her realtor on the side like, set up a little demo session or whatever. We're going to go house searching like tomorrow. So Megan's realtor asked them, what's your price point? And Megan said 1.5 to 2. And I thought 1.5 to $200? No, I knew what she meant. She meant 1.5 to $2 million. And Jordan nearly fainted. It might have been the baked chicken smoothie, but it was probably the price point. Jordan definitely said the house they were in, while it's beautiful, is just too much house for what they need. Well, Megan doesn't feel that way. So Jordan reveals in his testimonial, listen, I'm going to feel like a moocher if she sells her home in LA and then we buy a home here with that money. It just isn't going to make me feel good. I know what's coming around the corner, y'all. So now it's time for another family meeting, and this time it's Annie meeting Nick's mom, dad, and brother. Well, the mom says, I remember one day when we were together, sitting out at the lake, at our cottage. Memories. And I'm thinking, you owned a cottage on a lake, and you were sitting out there. Ooh, they got money too. Even though it was a pretty short parent meeting, his parents approve of Annie, and yeah, I thought it was a pretty bland segment. But you know it's not bland. The pod reunion, ladies and gentlemen. This was something. It's Western themed, so basically typical Colorado attire, and Megan comes in with a sparkled out bandana. Guess that's about $10,000 worth of diamonds. So the girls have a chat together, of course, and Megan met Jordan's ex, which is Luca's mom. She said they were all joking, but I bet his ex wasn't joking about that custody though. She was like, Megan, you're so great. My son's with me 50% of the time. And then Allie reveals that Anton told her that he hasn't been to a strip club in over a year, and Allie basically said she isn't sure Anton has qualities that she wants in a husband. We know what's going to happen. They're going to get to the altar, and Allie's going to say no, while Anton says yes first. That's my prediction. So we have past contestants show up. First is Patrick, and he tells us that, well, Casey told him she wanted to see him the moment they got back home. Clout Casey is in it for, well, the fame. I mean, who would have thought? But it does feel like to me that I'm glad Patrick is like, nah, Casey, we're not doing this. So once Patrick does get back to Denver, she then follows up and texts him, hey, I actually am not ready to see you. And at this point, Patrick's head's spinning around. So she's dragging this out and he can't take a hint, but it's over, y'all. It's over between them. Nick said, hey, I think that she's gaslighting you, bro. And Nick, it's pretty ironic coming from you. So Patrick asked Casey for the ring back, and Casey said, I'm actually going to keep the ring, and they haven't spoken since. I have so many thoughts, but one of them is, Casey, what are you doing? You have a whole man outside of the pods, but you want to keep the ring? So Kate shows up, and then Madison does something weird. She walks Kate over to Joe. Joe was like, hi.
I'm Paul.
And it's like, come on, what else do you want him to do, Madison? And then Kate goes over to Nick, and this is where the drama happens. Sort of. Actually, I ain't gonna lie to y'all. There was really no drama there. But Anna shows up, and this is some drama. And then right after Anna, Mike shows up, and I just said, boo, tomato, tomato. I don't like Mike. None of my friends like Mike, okay? Jordan says, well, he's my friend. He really says, that's my friend Mike. At this point, I'm like, Megan, run. Run right now. Put on your sparkled out Nikes and run. And Brendan then walks in, and I'm thinking, oh boy. Annie, of course, has something to say. Annie sees Brendan and says, well, Brendan didn't fight for me. Annie? He literally went back into the pods and asked you, do you remember what door we wanted, the color of the door? Didn't that, win you over? Being sarcastic, of course, but still, he was trying to fight for you. And then Annie said, the same energy Brendan has right now isn't what he showed in the pods towards her. But of course, because you dumped him twice. What, you want him to come in and act like y'all are in a relationship? Come on. It's really giving she wants men to fawn over her. But I'm over Annie right now. Let's get back to the bull riding. So Joe saw Allie riding the bull, and he said, and I quote, it's hot. Joe is for the streets. Throw him out there. Like Charles in Love is Blind France. Throw him out there. Because how, if you're Madison, can you stand by and hear that and think, ooh, that's so fun? No, it's disrespectful. Listen, men, don't do that. But also, I do believe men can cheat in more ways than just physically, emotionally, and by their words. Don't. Nasty. So now Mike and Megan have a chat, and he asks her if you want to dance, and Megan literally said no so quickly. Good for you. Mike just continues to dig a hole for himself, him and all of his tribe of wealthy white men. So Mike apologizes for making Megan cry as he gaslit her in the pods. He didn't say I gaslit you, but that's basically what he was saying. Mike tells Megan, I picked the ring out for you and everything. I was ready for you, even though I was putting my shoes on and about to leave the pods. And he even told her, I would have gotten you an emerald cut. You jerk. Don't do that. See, this is why. I'm like, Jordan, why are you friends with this guy? He don't care about you. Mike then finally asks Megan, do you think you made a mistake? And Megan says, no, and I'm leaving the conversation. Good for you, Megan. Good for you. Alrighty, now it's time for Patrick and Anna. Patrick said if Anna stayed, we would have gone all the way. And at first I was really hoping that we'd learn a little bit more about why Anna left. And I was hoping that it was for something other than the reason she gave. Anna alluded to the reason she left was because she couldn't wrap her mind around her and Patrick being more than friends in the pods. So, okay, why did you leave the pods then? Is it just because you had no other connection? Okay, fine, but now you're making Patrick feel bad. And the reason I say that is because Anna begins blaming Patrick, saying, how can you feel we go all the way when you proposed to Casey? Yeah, because Anna, you left the pods. So she ghosts him and then gets mad for him moving on after she ghosts him. Huh? Anna said she cried over both Blake and Patrick when she left the pods. And I don't know. That seems like crocodile tears to me. I don't know. Patrick said, and I quote, remember when you told me if you know, you'll know? And I'm like, Patrick, I know you're maybe trying to draw at straws here, but like, that's not a really revolutionary quote here. Like, that might have worked maybe in the pods in the moment, but if you know, you'll know. It's something that we've heard before. So I do think Anna is weak for leaving and blaming Patrick. Alrighty, let's move on to Annie and Nick, which then also ties in Kalybriah and Edmond. I promise you it's going to make sense. Annie said, Nick is so perfect with his sports car, and I just really love him so much. And a sports car. And then Edmond said, man, I'd feel great if I heard that from my partner, even though I know it's not true. I'd feel good hearing that. And Kalybriah said, you said what? Kalybriah actually does ask him to hear what? Oh boy. In the moment I heard her say that and she came over and Edmond looked like a deer in headlights, the only thing I could think of was this. Kalybriah then pulls Edmond to the side and asks, are you comparing our relationship to other relationships again? And listen, while I understand this is a conversation that needs to be had, I don't think she should have been airing him out in front of other people. Do it off to the side or something. While Edmond did instigate a little bit, I do think Kalybriah almost could have waited for this to happen back at home. But Edmond revealed why he said it, and he said, well, KB, it's because you need to say more nice things about me. I feel like you don't say enough nice things about me. So Kalybriah leaves, goes to the bathroom, and cries, and I think Madison follows after her, but they just clearly cannot communicate well. Alrighty, from one little bit of toxicity to the next, and that is Kate and Nick's chat. Oof. Nick apologizes to Kate, and Kate's face this entire time is hilarious. She has like a little head tilt, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she doesn't believe this man. And then Kate reveals, hey, remember Nick when you told me that you couldn't get all the way there with Annie? And I'm thinking, wait, is that true? Did we hear that and I totally forgot? Or is that something that was off air that was then brought on air? Because if that's the case, Nick, I knew you were a snake, but now you're a super steak. And then they kind of cut away from the conversation pretty quickly. And we get into Allie saying, hey, Annie, I think Nick is love bombing. And Annie says, no, I disagree. That mountain cabin, whatever Nick has, is clouding Annie's judgment in her memory. Because Annie, he was love bombing you for sure. Well, Annie then, I guess it clicked in her head because she started giving Nick the cold shoulder. So I think the women are feeding Annie a lot of things. And she's like, okay, if I'm hearing this from multiple people, Nick, they must be right and you must be wrong. Whew. And then we get another immature Joe and Jordan moment because they're caught on camera saying to each other that Brendan could sleep better with Annie. And I don't mean like, good night, you know, it's gross. I just think Joe, Jordan, and alcohol should never be a mixture ever again. Kate then tells Madison that Nick is fake and calculated. So Kate, after that conversation with Nick, was super heated, not happy at all. And then Madison says, hey, I have something I want to share too. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, maybe it could be pleasant or something. She says, well, Joe told me that he wants to get me pregnant. Ugh, it's like a jump scare. Might be the worst horror movie ever. And at this point, Joe continues to drink, and I'm thinking, yeah, he's legit an alcoholic, and I do pray that he gets the help he needs. Like, legitimately, I hope he gets the help he needs, because this is not normal behavior. And then episode 9 ends with this cliffhanger. Edmond is sitting at the table by himself, looking like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? And then he proceeds to go and kiss the floor. No, I'm kidding. He doesn't do any of that. But he is sitting at the table by himself. Kalybriah's gone, I guess, and oh boy, I'm so curious to see what happens in next week's episodes. Remember, 10 and 11 before our finale in 2 weeks. And there you have it, y'all. That's my real recap and review of episodes 7 through 9. Now, week 2, in my opinion, was much better than week 1 of Love is Blind season 9. And that tends to be the case. But in this instance, it was just even more unhinged. And like, baked chicken aside, or I don't even know what the heck that was, but like, this was just unraveling a lot of relationships. In my opinion, I can't see anyone say yes at the altar. Maybe one of them, but both? No, I don't think so. And when I say one, I mean like the man or the woman saying yes, but the other partner saying no. I just can't see it, you guys. And I just don't think Love is Blind season 9 will result in any marriages. And that would be a shame, because Love is Blind France, if you missed the reunion, of course, go back and watch my recap, but kind of spoiler, no marriages worked out anyway there too. So it just feels like none of these marriages are lasting. And that's a shame, you guys. Love is Blind is starting to, they got to pick it up. Maybe they should just come to Miami. No, that's toxic. But yeah, definitely come to Miami still. So again, you guys, I'm coming back next week for my week 3 recap. So if you haven't already, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, like this video, and again, get loud in the comments and let me know which moment shocked you the most this week. And if you say the baked chicken smoothie, yes, you would be correct. If you say Edmond saying what he said and Kalybriah's reaction, you might be correct there too. Alrighty, y'all. Well, that's all I got. I can't wait. I'm going to get started on these episodes for next week. Thanks so much for watching. God bless you guys. And as always, I'll catch you at the next screening.